Hi, and welcome to Collaboration Wednesday, brought to you by the Grunin Foundation. I am Jeremy Grunin, president of the Grunin Foundation. And every Wednesday, we like to bring to you a community leader who has exemplified collaboration, who has really kind of had to help bring organizations and folks together to make an impact during this crazy time, this crisis that will certainly go down in our history. So today we are fortunate to be joined by Paul McEvily. Oh my God, Paul, I struggle with your last name so much. McEvily, right? Did I get it that time? Oh, I am the worst at that. You know, I always want to put the accent on the wrong syllable. Paul McEvily, he's the executive director and board member of Interfaith Neighbors, Inc. Sorry, I'm not so good. I like easy last names, but yours obviously gets me. So, Paul, thank you so much for taking your time today. And I know Interfaith Neighbors has been doing such great work in our communities. Why don't you tell the folks watching a little bit about what you and your team have been doing?
Yes, well, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for having me today. And no worries, because I get a lot of variations on that last name, believe me. So Interfaith Neighbors, nonprofit community-based organization, we do a lot of things, but since the pandemic really went full-blown, we've really been focused on two areas of our mission, dealing with critical needs and dealing with the most vulnerable among us. So for us, that's two of our programs. We run the senior meal program for the county. So every day we pump out 1,100 meals across Monmouth County. Monday through Friday, we go to 900 doorsteps around the county to seniors who are homebound, who either can't get out and shop for themselves or they can't cook for themselves. So that's one of our base programs, and we've been doing it for over 20 years. In crisis mode, we've not only got to make sure we can continue to produce the meals, but that our delivery mechanism holds up. And of those 900 doorsteps that we go to around the county every day, about 500 of them we do with our own employees. So thank God for them that they are continuing to come to work and that they're continuing to get out there and deliver the meals. But over 400 of the doorsteps are done by volunteers. So some of our volunteers are older, they've had to step back, but it seems every day we have people calling us and wanting to contribute, wanting to volunteer. So we've been able to backfill on those routes so that we can still get to these 900 doorsteps to serve that vulnerable population, which are the seniors. And because the senior centers are closed all around the county, we're actually going to more homebounds now because seniors who can go to a senior center normally don't have that available to them. So that's the vulnerable population. We've been asked by the county to expand that operation to deliver meals to people who are either quarantining because they've been exposed to someone who has the virus or they're in recovery. So that operation has increased. We're able to do it because our food supply lines hold up. Our employees are still coming and still able to deliver meals. And thank God for those partners of ours all across the county who are delivering them as volunteers. So the other critical program is the one where actually we started as an agency, as a homeless prevention agency, helping families either avoid homelessness or recover from homelessness. Normally we help about 350 families a year with partial but direct rent subsidies. Since March 18th, Jeremy, we've gotten over 1,000 calls for assistance. And because in Monmouth County, as well as in Ocean County, so much of the local economy is hospitality driven. Of course, the restaurants are shut down, retail is shut down. So those paychecks, those households that maybe even have two paychecks coming out of the hospitality industry, there's no money coming into those households. So those are the calls that we're getting. And although we've been a homeless prevention rental assistance agency since our start 31 years ago, the profile of these people is very different. The households that are calling us now for assistance are by and large households that have never missed a rent payment. They've never missed a utility payment. And all of a sudden they don't have the income to carry their monthly nut. And those are the people who are calling, trying to figure out how they navigate the system, how they can get assistance so they can pay some of those critical bills.
So yeah, so it's great points. I think that it was important early on to identify the at-risk kind of groups. The first one that was identified, I think, was children, who, when schools were closed, were going to be at risk because so many are on free or reduced lunch and on subsidized food that they weren't going to be going to a physical school to get food. And so I think that communities were kind of quick to mobilize efforts to make sure that those kids, and by extension their families, got fed. The next community that people got, oh my God, we have a problem, is I think that senior community, especially those that are senior isolated. And especially when we note that, especially in Monmouth and Ocean County, we have among the largest senior populations really in the country. And also among the largest veteran populations in the country. And so a lot of these folks don't have caregivers and supporters and other folks to get them what they need. And at a time like this, when services are harder to come by, they are really struggling. And now you just identified what has really come to the fore in recent weeks, which is especially our minority communities who work heavily in hospitality industries, or industries that were severely affected by this new world that we're in, where we're looking at, in some areas, 25% plus unemployment. And these are folks who working their butts off, paying their bills, and all of a sudden they don't know where to go. Or they were members of a gig economy where they can't even get an appropriate unemployment check. So people that have never had to use services are using them, and you're doing an amazing job identifying those folks every day and mobilizing the needs. So as someone that's a citizen of this community, we are very thankful for what you're doing, Paul.
You hit on an excellent point there, Jeremy. It's the people in the gig economy, the people who are not on a payroll and who have lost their source of income. These are the people that are calling, and the rent issue was one thing. Yes, you're obligated to pay your rent, but because of the moratorium against evictions, we try to say to them, yes, we can deal with that, but let's put that to the side for the moment. What are your today needs? And the today needs are food. By and large, it's food. It's paying their cable bills so they can communicate with the outside world. It's paying the utility bills. So, we go to, every week we're basically purchasing $5,000 or $6,000 worth of food cards and handing out food cards to people because that is the number one critical need.
That's true. And that's a great point you made, because, cable, people don't think about cable and internet. These kids right now, their only access to school is through the internet. And there is a real issue around who actually can get to that, because some of us take for granted, the internet, wow, my connection is really slow today. Well, there's an access problem with lots of kids who don't have internet typically, right? That's a luxury that some of us just take for granted to a large extent. Paul, you mentioned you kind of touched on a couple of partnerships. Talk to me about some of the organizations that you're working with, for a nonprofit in particular. I've noticed that I've seen you and your organization, Interfaith Neighbors, on quite a number of kind of mastheads, letterheads, email heads around kind of consortiums or groups that are working together. Talk to me about who you've been partnering with, some new, some old, what that looks like.
So early on in the crisis, probably mid-March, late March, we were very fortunate to have a number of our foundations, family or private foundations that support us, reach out, of course, including the Gruden Foundation, the Stone Foundation, several others. And they invited us, as well as other nonprofits, to apply for or to receive emergency grants to support households that were COVID impacted, right? So within that social services web that operates throughout our county in Monmouth, there are a number of nonprofits that are working together, including Interfaith Neighbors, Lunch Break, Family and Children's Services, HabCorp, Parker's Health Clinic. We're all working in a collaboration now with fielding calls from households that are COVID impacted, trying to make sure that that we're aware, like Interfaith is aware what Lunch Break is doing, and Lunch Break is aware what HabCorp is doing. So we're not stepping on each other's toes, We're not reinventing the wheel. And, you know, unfortunately, in every crisis, you know, there are opportunists among us. So, you know, we want to make sure that people who are in need are getting a response, but that people are looking to take advantage of the opportunity are not gaming the system. So we come together. We have a conference call every week. We talk about how many calls we're receiving, what's the nature of the call, has the profile of the need changed. So that's one thing. Separately from that, because we operate the senior meal program under contract to the county is very much our partner in this operation. And we're on the phone practically every day with the county, talking about where the emergent need is, how it's being addressed, when and how the federal relief dollars might flow to the critical needs. So that's a very important partnership. And then, of course, a lot of what we do, we can't do without the volunteers. And the care and feeding of our volunteers is very important to us.
So that brings up a great point. So have your volunteers, are you making sure, you said care and feeding of them, is somebody feeding them? Is somebody, or are you doing that? Or are local restaurants helping you? Or what's, you know, you're based heavily in Asbury, right? But which has an unbelievable restaurant community. I know you work throughout the county. Are you having local restaurants that have been pitching in and helping you as well?
The restaurants, we're aware of the Asbury Park Dinner Table Initiative, kind of a grassroots initiative, and we coordinate with them as well in serving the needs of the population of Asbury Park. The meal program really goes all across the county. And so the care and feeding of our volunteers, first of all, we want to make sure that they are well and they are safe, that they have masks, that they have gloves, that they have sanitizers, that they understand the protocols that we now have adopted to try to ensure the safety of both the person delivering the meal and the person receiving the meal. But I'm sure that some of those volunteers are seniors, and they may be taking advantage of the senior meal program.
Great. I'm sure about that. I know that's, you know, we sometimes forget about the layers upon layers upon layers of folks that need support. You know, we have the obvious answers, which are the folks that are working on the front lines in healthcare and are dealing with this. Then we have to think about their families. We have to think about the folks that need to make sure they're fed and they're taken care of. We need to think about the folks that run public transportation to make sure they can get to wherever they need to get to. It's just, and then the volunteers, making sure the volunteers are taken care of, because it's got to work all together as a beautiful kind of fabric. Because if it doesn't, if any part of it falls down, it doesn't work. And so organizations like yours are doing an amazing job of bringing folks together at all levels to make sure it works. Paul, talk to me for a second about, sometimes it's a dirty word among nonprofits or for-profits for that matter, and that's collaboration. I think there's a fear by some folks that they're going to lose control of of a program, that there's going to be a pride of authorship piece, that there's going to be an ego that gets involved, that somebody's going to take the lead, that somebody's going to take a donor, God forbid, right? We're all very territorial about our donors, especially within the same kind of affected space. So have you seen that in a time like this, where the last 60 days or so has been so just dramatic, that folks have checked their egos at the door, or you still have to kind of work around it, tiptoe around it a little bit? What's been your experience on that?
I think that's very true. I think, you know, normally, whether it's the for-profit sector or the not-for-profit sector, we tend to operate in silos, and we tend to want to protect our turf, right? But when there's a crisis at hand, and I think it's true in this crisis, it was true post-Sandy, it was true in any number of different situations in my experience over time. When there's a crisis at hand, people do check their egos at the door, and they zoom in, they focus directly on the need and how that need can best be addressed. And of course, the best way to address it is everybody brings something to the table, right? So you play to your strengths as an individual entity or as an individual, and you try to find the synergies between what you bring to the table and what someone else is bringing to the table, while you are focused on trying to address that most critical need. And you know, I said earlier to Heather that we find ourselves in the midst of this crisis operating more efficiently on those two areas of our business, the meal production, meal delivery, and responding to emergency financial needs, right? And a lot of that is because the kind of distractions, the personal interactions that sometimes get in the way, those things fall by the wayside, and you're focused on the need.
So that's great. So, you know, I look at your background and your resume, and I wonder, you know, you worked for a number of years at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, right? When you look at a time like this, and you look at the work that you're doing, you must just feel really kind of fulfilled on some level that at a time like this, you can kind of be on the front line of making such an impact. I mean, I know this is a horrible situation and nobody would wish this on anyone, but do you rest your head on your pillow every night saying, you know, I'm glad I could do a part here to make an impact?
Yeah, it's a very different life now. In my other life, working for the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, you know, I had some great opportunities, did some wonderful things. But here you see the need of your local community, and thank God you have the opportunity to try to help those in need. And that's what I say to people about Interfaith Neighbors. You know, we have the opportunity each and every day at Interfaith Neighbors to help people who really need help. We try to have a little fun doing it, but at the bottom line is we're all kind of tasked to help those less fortunate among us. And that's, you know, you're absolutely right. There's a reward that's difficult to describe that comes with that.
I talk to Lieutenant Governor Guadagno about this pretty regularly now, as she runs Fulfill, and I chair the board, and I get twice a week from her either a text message or an email saying that she loves her job, not because she loves seeing people in crisis, because nobody loves that, but it's the feeling that you're not sitting there and watching it pass you by. You're out there every day doing something about it. And Paul, you certainly are doing something about it every day. So we thank you again for that. Paul, if you could just do me a favor and if you could just one by one go through each of those pictures behind you and just tell me what's on them, that would be a really great way to wrap up here.
Well, this is my daughter, some of my kids at a very young age, parents, grandparents, just kind of the story in one wall of 40, 50, 60 years, several generations of McEvilly's.
So Paul, I gotta say, you know, you really could tell a lot about someone. I've learned, I think you could tell a lot about someone by their Zoom background. Right, I really do believe that. You know, and I think you know, some people want to portray themselves as really studious and intellectual, so they're in front of a bunch of bookshelves, right, showing all the classic works that they probably never read, but bought the starter kit for a really nice bookshelf. You know, and some people have all their diplomas behind them to show how educated and well read they are. I think it's an amazing testament to you as a human to see that you choose to show your family behind you. And that kind of is indicative of what kind of person you are. So again, Paul McEvily, thank you so much for all that you and Interfaith Neighbors are doing. And thank you for spending a few minutes with us on Collaboration Wednesday.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. And about families, really, in a situation like this, it's all about families and making sure they're safe and good. So thank you for having us.
Interfaith Neighbors, Paul McEvily, and I've even gotten his name right by the end of this interview, so that's a win for me. I felt a little bit better that he called us the Grunin Foundation instead of the Grunin Foundation, so at least we had, like, you know, it was close. We were close. At least we both had a little bit of a, you know. Anyway, everybody that's watching, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all that you're doing in our nonprofit communities, or even if you're just doing a great job staying home and staying socially distant. That's a good thing right now. We need to all be disciplined. Stay tuned for next week's Collaboration Wednesday. I'm Jeremy Grunin on behalf of the Grunin Foundation. See you next week.